Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Welcome back to the second episode of what we're calling, or what I'm calling. I made the executive decision to call it Alone Together with Perplexing Ruins of the Dungeon Dive.
Good
So
morning.
I am joined again by Alan, with Alan. How you doing, Alan?
I'm good, man. Yeah, alone together works good. That seems to be a good way to talk about what we do.
I think I had it, just uploaded the first episode as an interview with Perplexing Ruins, but it wasn't really an interview, and I kind of wanted to give it a little bit of a catchy name. So
Now it's like a show.
yeah, it's a show. We have an official title,
Yeah, how about that?
and we
Well,
have
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here, and a total honor. And it was fun last time, so I'm excited to talk games again here.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's been good. I learned some things from you, and I think some other people did. And I think as the conversation evolves and progresses over time, I think we'll
Yep.
I'm excited to find our little niches that we continue to turn to and to return to, and different types of topics that we kind
You
of
know, it's
cover.
interesting. When I first got into this, I was very much just alone.
Yeah,
And then it started becoming more together as I found people. But now, not a week goes by on social media where somebody hasn't dropped a solo specific thing, or like longtime traditional gamers are like, man, I'm learning about solo stuff. And that's gonna be exciting when like big time writers,
yeah,
who've been doing this for a while, like, oh, we could really contribute to this. Because right now it's pretty DIY hacks and stuff, and like the
yeah. It
amount of
is.
creativity has been amazing. So
At least it's kind of weird in the board game side of the hobby. Really kind of came into the solo thing. Well, there's been solo board games for a long time, but even Euro games started bringing in
oh, yeah,
the automata players, and
yeah. Amazingly,
but
Scythe seemed to really hit that off
it
first,
did it
maybe
did
in a
it,
meaningful way.
yeah, it was one of the first big, oh, this comes with a way to play solo.
Right. Can you imagine had Lords of Waterdeep done that like 10 years
Oh
ago?
man, yeah, I know. I love that game. That's one of my favorite worker placement games.
I
That's
play it
so fun.
digitally, but I struggle a little bit when I have to like go find a variant on BGG, and
Yeah,
especially for bigger complex games. I think it's amazing people do that, and we can talk about that, like the DIY mods and stuff.
yeah,
But man, had Waterdeep done that, it would have been the biggest
yeah.
tabletop game for fantasy people everywhere.
I do a lot, games that aren't solo but are adventure style games.
Mhm.
I just play them solo, just
Right, right.
just to see, because they don't really have a lot of player interaction anyways. I mean, games like Talisman and Runebound, they're just kind of, everybody's kind of doing their own thing anyways.
Yeah,
And
yep.
so I just kind of, play them to see if I can win or if I can get to a certain point or something. But
It's just to have a romp, right? Like
that's what
a
it is.
thing.
Yeah. A thing to kind of interact with in my imagination. And
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I started watching your channel, and I started realizing when you were just using random boards for games,
oh
even I
yeah,
think Geek Gamers does this too, just like
she does.
mashup, like, and especially when I saw you use that Touch of Evil, I think it's Touch of Evil, the
Touch
Gothic
of
game.
Evil. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote Fallen, right? And I'm like, oh man, this is just a good board just to have on the table for ambiance because the
The
art's
next,
so good and
yep.
weird. And anyway, stuff like that. And I think you can do a lot solo and just,
Speaking of that, I want to grab something real quick off my shelf that I meant to have because I wanted to talk to you about it. Give me 2 seconds. You mentioned Fallen, and I just printed out something new for Fallen, so
oh
I,
yeah,
I, I
sweet.
I totally forgot to take that off my shelf. So, but
Yeah, man,
yeah,
people have been doing some Fallen stuff. I
they
got the game
have.
jam going right now. It's pretty exciting.
Is that what's going on? There's
Yeah,
a Fallen game jam?
for about 2 more weeks, and we've seen a real uptick in contributions and some really neat stuff, and it's starting to catch on a little bit.
So there might be some people watching, since we have a lot of beginners watching the channel who maybe
Hmm.
don't know what a game jam is. Can you give us like
Yeah,
a 2 minute
yep.
definition or something?
Typically done on itch.io, which is an indie platform for video games and tabletop games. And usually the creator of a game will host a jam where they have a certain period of time, 1 to 2 months usually, where they invite people to create content for their game. It's usually facilitated with free tools, art, ideas, stuff like that. Usually you can get the SRD for your game, for the game you're working on as a free
And for
document.
those, let's define SRD.
System reference document, like, like the core rules without all the flavor, just like the base text.
Yeah.
And like I did that. You can get the text version of Fallen for free on my website, and then people can read it and get an idea and make stuff for Game Jam. So they contribute and they can sell it or not. And that's what it is. So it's just a cool way for people to get excited and around.
Yeah, it's a neat way to, it helps both sides of the party, right? It helps the person running the game jam. It gets their game out there. It's kind of like free advertising in a way, which is really nice. It's free.
Totally.
It's free, wholesome advertising, right? It's like
you're not
people are excited about what you're doing, and then it also helps smaller creators. They can kind of glom on to this thing that already exists, and then they can get their creation out, kind of attached to that in a way, and get some eyeballs on it.
This mutual benefits is sort of something I wanted to talk about as part of my thing today, actually. So that works really well. But game jams are exciting because there's no money usually involved, but you're always, at least I've always seen, you're welcome to sell the products, make money for yourself, and usually the creators will promote it, stuff like that. So
yeah. Well, that's cool. So what else? What have you been working on? Let's get into that. So what have you been working on? What have you been playing? What have you been? What's been occupying your hobby time recently?
So much, man. I've been so. I finally got rid of, like, my plate was cleared. I'm like, I'm gonna go hardcore and develop some stuff. So I started developing a card game. It's been like a lifelong dream of mine, I guess. Not lifelong, but many years. To make a card tabletop game. And so I finally started doing that, and it was based on the Fallen world, and it was like a card-based deck building placement resource type game, using a deck of cards and cubes and stuff. And I got really into it and spent many hours. And then I got sidetracked by making the challenge of an 18 card game for Button Shy. So then I spent 12 days straight working on a new game with only 18 cards, and that was going really well. And then I got sidetracked, and I just put out a single page solo game thing. So that's all been in the last, since Thanksgiving, I guess. And then for my patrons, I did the challenge for myself, doing 2 spot pieces of art a day for patrons. So on January 1st, my patrons will get 52 pieces of art.
Oh, nice.
For their stuff.
And you that's royalty free. They can put that in commercial products.
Yeah. My work's appeared in quite a few books around the world now at this point.
I think I was recently looking at something, and I saw one of your pieces of art. that wasn't one of your things. And so I think I was talking to Roger Deering of Dungeon Crusade. I think it was when I was talking to him, but it dawned on me, and this should have dawned on me decades ago, but it recently dawned on me how much art assets are just created for games. And getting into this sector of more independent games, I noticed a lot more pieces of art being reused in multiple products across multiple art. And I have no problem with that. I think it's awesome, but it was a concept that I never thought of, that I just oh yeah, there's people out there who are just making art that independent creators can buy to throw in their game to add a little bit of pizzazz to it.
Not everybody has the time or the desire to make art.
Yeah.
But a lot of games love art. And so there's a whole wealth of people making drawings and stuff that you can use, and usually really cheap.
Yeah, you can get some like great packs even at DrivethruRPG. For like $20, you can get like 1,000 packs or something.
Yeah, Carlos I think it's a guy named Carlos Castillo. He's like a master
I
old school
yeah,
artist.
yeah, I know that guy. I don't know him, but
Yeah,
I know his name. Yeah.
he's amazing, and he has a bunch of packs. And then on itch.io, there's a guy named Charlie Furgraves, who's more edgier contemporary dungeon art. The guy who wrote Into the Weird and the Wild.
Okay.
He has an awesome set of art packs you can buy. And then like mine on my Patreon for $250 a month, my people have access to like almost 300 pieces of art now.
Oh wow, that's super cool.
And so they'll get another 50 pieces on January 1, and then yeah, they get used, man. It's a cool way to like, I get some support financially, but then these people don't have to spend like $300-400 on art usually.
Ooh, man, art is so expensive. I mean, it rightly so, right? I mean, art is
no,
expensive,
totally,
but
yep.
It can be a huge hurdle for a young creator or for a creator who just doesn't have the finances. Like, okay, I have this great game, but
yep.
games need art because we're looking at them, right? Where there are things that we're looking at and interacting with visually, so they need.
Otherwise, you're just telling stories,
yeah,
right? Like they're parts, they're pieces of books.
Yeah,
and,
but like
yeah,
a commissioned piece of art can $500, you know, for a.
Yep, been there, and it's
like, whoa,
it's worth it, but you have to be able to pay for it, you know, and that can be a real hit to an indie developer's project, right? And that's one thing that's really interesting, right? So if you don't like, so that's what I've been up to. And then if a tiny segue, maybe we talk about this later, but like, especially in board gaming, this world of like high polished art. Yeah. Now everybody expects everything to look like Fantasy Flight games,
right?
Or Scythe or whatever. But that's not really the case, you know. Like there's this whole realm of like quirky, weird indie art that doesn't look pseudo realistic or doesn't look, you know. I mean, of course, you have your people like Dungeon Venture guy, who's frankly just brilliant. You know, his art is hell. I'd buy his games just to look at pictures. But but he's a kind of rare exception, you know, for a small time maker who massively talented. But anyway, my point being, like, there is this whole world where you can get a lot of character, weirdness, and individuality in your games for low prices, but they're not going to look like Fantasy Flight games, you know, and things like that.
There's
Fantasy Flight uses the same pieces of art a lot.
Oh, they get really good use out of their art library,
totally.
which is cool. I actually like that. I like picking up one Arkham game and say, oh yeah, hey, that's that picture of Ashcan Pete from
Yep.
from,
it gives a little arc to the story.
It does. I think so. Yeah. Speaking of artists, I want to highlight a guy who I just recently discovered, I think last month. His name is JP Coovert.
Yeah.
You know JP Coovert? So he's got a YouTube channel where he does dungeon drawings and very cartoony style.
Yeah. He puts out zines too, right?
Yeah. So he just did this hack of Tunnel Goons called Goons and Ghosts.
Goons and Ghosts.
It's
Slimer.
It's Slimer. It's a Ghostbusters theme. The character sheets are proton pack backpacks that he drew up.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
That was really cool. I really like his art. Speaking of kind of, you know, just not Fantasy Flight style art or Wizards of the Coast style art, but just cool, kind of
quirky,
really cartoony, and his stuff has a really cool vibe to it, and that I really like.
He's really good, and his YouTube has a lot of like educational components.
It does, yeah. He teaches like, okay, here's how to draw like this kind of stuff, and but I thought this was he just released this a couple weeks ago, and I had just stumbled on his YouTube channel about a couple days before he released it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to immediately buy this. I don't know if I'll ever play it. It's not made for solo. It could be easily adapted to solo, but I just thought one of the things, you know, but I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about today is like, you know, supporting indie artists and supporting smaller creators. And I think one of the
that's a good segue. A Hack of Tunnel Goons was written by Nate Treme of Highland Paranormal Society. That's his game moniker for his He wrote Prole and Tunnel Goons.
Okay, yeah.
But he has a Patreon, and he draws like that, and he'll put out pieces like that. So, and he rates really small, interesting little games that could be soloable because it's like one page of rules usually.
Yeah.
But what's great about that is whatever your style is, pixel art, cartoon like that, or more grim and, kind of more Borga or whatever, you can find an artist that makes stuff, and they just want their stuff out there. So if you kind of figure out a way to pay them fairly, or use their Patreon, or buy their art pack, it's a pretty cool like circle thing you've got going, and it creates a dialogue, a meta dialogue within itself too. And I love being a part of that. It's just really exciting, and everybody gets excited about each other's projects and things like that.
Remember, so on the last episode, you and I, we had discussed briefly this guy named Chaoclypse. Yeah, right.
I struck Brandon.
Brandon. So
super talented dude.
I just paid him a small sum of money because he made a little Dungeon Dive logo, and that's going to be the next logo on in January for the Patreon, the Dungeon Dive Patreon shirt, and then I'll put that over on TeePublic for anyone to buy after a few months.
Nice.
But he had designed it for free. He threw it up on Instagram just as a kind of a thank you. I said, hey, can I buy a high-res version of that, and I'll pay you this much money and give you a t-shirt when I can. And he was like, cool. But he recently did something for Fallen Lands, and this is one of the things I printed out.
He's great. I talk to him a few times a week, actually. We talk.
Oh, do you? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we've become kind of buddies, I guess.
He's really into Fallen right now.
His last solo session, he's been YouTubing Fallen solo. Mm-hmm. It was hilarious. I had a great time watching. He displayed the mechanics perfectly. He's just like really talented guy, person. Really talented, fun. He's all about being involved and helping people out. He also designs video games.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when that guy rests. But
I know. Yeah, but
it's really good people. That pamphlet, he displayed that pamphlet in his last solo session, Fallen. It was a forest crawl. Yeah,
a forest crawl. So if people are interested in Fallen, Tattered Leaves is a little supplement that you have a D88 table of of interesting things to discover in a woods, in a forest, utilizing the point crawl system from Fallen. And I think eventually we're going to have to talk, maybe the next episode, we should kind of discuss these ideas of point crawl, hex crawl, because we're probably going to be throwing around some terms that maybe some people aren't familiar with, and maybe maybe learn some new things along the way. But yeah, I wanted to highlight that because I thought that was pretty cool.
He's great to watch. I'm excited to see where his career goes in the tabletop sector, because he's great. He's super talented. Guy he just drew a map last night that he posted on Discord, and I was like, oh my gosh, man, that's so cool. He works hard. I think he had mentioned one time before that he had suffered from some exhaustion, I think. He better he better back it up a little bit, or else he's gonna get exhausted again. His ears are probably burning because we're chatting about it so much. But like I told him the other day, I was like, dude, take a rest, man. Take a rest.
Yeah.
You're very talented, but you don't want to
burn out too quickly. I know.
And that's something to talk about, I guess, So in the indie scene, there's this like, I do it for fun because I love games. Yeah. And then there's this, I do it because I make some money at it. And finding that space in between, it's a grind, man. It's a real grind if you're doing it for anything financial, like, because you're essentially, at least you're up against, not in a conflicted way, but just hundreds of people around the world are posting cool stuff all the time. and and there's neat stuff coming out, and so you pick your circles and your creators, and it can be kind of a grind, like constantly trying to put out, challenge yourself. I had that a while ago where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like drawing every day for people, and I hadn't played for a long time, and it's just got to be like more about making and promoting what I made than playing. And that was, so I slowly started figuring out a way to round it back, less commissions and stuff, and just doing things for the patrons. So anyway, it's interesting, like for people who are used to following big board game productions, perhaps from your show, when it comes to like the independent scene, and even board game makers probably, and card people like Jason Glover and stuff like that, like they work really hard.
Yeah.
They work really hard, put in 30 hours a week. Some people have jobs on top of that just to make games that you can enjoy. So something to think about. And it kind of brings me to my next little thing, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course.
Like I do a lot of my stuff on itch.io, which is a really neat platform. DrivethruRPG is the one a lot of people know about, because you can buy PDFs, high quality PDFs for good prices. It's a great platform too. So this goes for that too, but like leaving reviews on there for games you buy or rating things may seem like insignificant or not, but it's kind of a nice way to contribute.
Does that really help? That does a good
on itch. It does. Yeah. It can give you like more visibility on lists and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's like game changing necessarily, but like Fallen for the first time got in the top 10 on itch, and it was there for like a week. We got up to like top 5 or something, or 6. And that was like really exciting. It was like, oh wow, people are playing my game. And that does a lot for morale. And then people get excited about the jam and making stuff for the game. And it's just something to think about, like supporting and leaving reviews for small time developers.
Yeah.
And, I mean, anyway, it's
hard. Cause like, even though I'm kind of in a different sector, it's like this weird thing where we're both kind of relying on things outside of our control a little bit to make some money. It's like I'm kind of, for half of my part-time job, I'm kind of relying on the YouTube algorithm, right?
Right.
And sometimes I'll make a video that gets really good reception and I'll start making a little bit of money, and then the next 5 just completely tank. And I have no idea why. Like it's not like I'm like switching subjects to covering Euro games or something, but it's kind of out of my control.
Man, tell me about it. I've been learning that too. And as soon as you start trying to understand it, you go mad. I'm learning that finally. After 2 years, I was always obsessed with like how to understand it.
Yeah.
But now and it's mostly, from some more experienced and smarter people than I are like, don't worry about it. Just do what you do. It'll happen if it happens. And because it's got to be fun too. And as soon as you start obsessing over algorithms and stuff.
Oh, I know. It gets like,
okay. It's like a total leeches it out, right? Like you want some success and make money. And I know you spend a lot of time filming and editing and making time. So, it's nice to get compensated in a way, but
yeah, well,
you also like board games,
yeah,
so
it's nice to be able to pay my bills every once in a while. No, it's not that bad, but somebody made a comment the other day. It's like, wow, I hope you're making a ton of money because your videos have a ton of ads. I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm sorry if YouTube is putting on too many ads. I'll go in and delete some that I can. But no, I'm not making a ton of money. I'm making less than minimum wage. So at this part of my job, I'm making less than minimum wage. So
yeah, it's a strange dialogue, the capital versus the fun, production versus not.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. It's a balance for whoever you are individually, but it's just something to think about if you want to support indie people, like ratings, reviews, blog about the games, share the games on social media that you play or buy, because it's that. And then everybody knows WotC and Hasbro. And all those games get shown all the time.
Yeah. That's a good idea. So let's talk about a game that I think you want to talk about, and I also.
Okay.
That was Runecairn. You had mentioned Runecairn.
Oh man, yeah, so good.
What did you have to say? What did you want to say about Runecairn?
The creator Colin by Odin's Beard, really
Odin's
good
Beard,
guy.
RPG.
Just,
Yep.
yeah, he's really nice guy. I like supporting him. So this is a hack of Cairn. So 3 stats, D20 under, pretty simple, no roll to hit. So if you want to play, and this is the advanced version of this. There's a zine version.
This is the Wardensaga version. Yeah.
And that's a Crom piece of art on the cover, the comic book artist.
Cover illustration by Crom. Yep. And then writing, layout, and illustrations interior by Colin Lesueur.
Isn't that amazing? That's the guy. Crom just released The Bird King, that graphic novel. He really amazing. Colin got that piece of art. But anyway, it's like if you want to play like Viking type stuff. But what makes this really special that Colin deliberately did, and I really admire him for this, is he created a whole solo play section in the back of the book.
Yep.
So he gives you your typical oracles, yes, no's, whatevers, and some words to guide you. And that's not overly rare, right? Most solo tools have that. Now, what's amazing is he created a delve generator in this book. And I think you watch Stoneaxe Tabletop.
I love Stoneaxe. He's going to be on an episode in January. We're finally going to get together and talk.
Awesome.
I love his just low key style. It's so comforting. It's like cozy.
Totally, right? And it's not a continuing session. He just like goes out and bashes up stuff. It's cool.
Yeah.
But he played quite a few of this game.
Yeah, he loved it. He loved it.
He doesn't do very often. But he played like 4 sessions of this.
I think even more. I think even like 7, because he said it was one of the most fun solo sessions he's ever had.
Yeah, if you watched his set, he was fun to watch because he was trying to balance his mead and flat. It was fun. But yeah, so in this game, Colin gives you a flow chart for delving and tables to roll on, and it's just like a neat way to generate some solo play for yourself. And Stoneaxe is actually a great example. Like some people get stuck, I think, like, oh, I don't know how to do all the NPCs. But when you watch Stoneaxe, he's like, oh, went to a dungeon, here's my mission, I fly to Bugbear.
Yep.
And it's like an hour, and that's all you need to do sometimes. You don't need to create this epic me, myself, and I campaign, which I love his show, but it doesn't always have to be like that.
That's a really interesting topic that I've been thinking about a lot recently. That as much good as they do, the big epic produced with professional voice actors and performers, that whole segment of YouTube RPG can be a detriment to people getting into the hobby, because it sets these lofty expectations that 99% of all gamers will never meet. I've been role playing since the mid 80s. I have never once had a session anywhere close to a critical role where people are like, no, every session is like a on the verge of disaster. People are
it's like Stoneaxe is like, rolled dice and died.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Nobody's voice acting. Nobody's like, like nobody's like hanging on every word of the dungeon master's description. And so while those can be fun to watch, I wouldn't want people to like watch them and then expect like, oh, that's how D&D is. I'm not an actor. I'm not a voice actor. I'm not a writer. I'm not a professional. My room isn't shaped like a dungeon.
Right.
I don't have lighting. I don't have monitors everywhere.
So I do think Me, Myself, and Die by Trevor Duvall.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does solo, and he displays how to use oracles really well. And he does voices. He is a professional voice actor. Mm-hmm. Now, what I love about his show is he breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah.
So he's just playing a game, and he lets you know that a lot. And he just kind of runs with it and can get kind of wild. And I also love that I listen to his show like an old time radio show.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
But you're right.
Audio entertainment.
Yeah. and he's great to watch because he's almost telling a story. But solo gaming typically isn't going to be that
exciting
produced.
Yeah,
It's usually more frustrating than that in my experience. It's way quieter.
so quiet. It's like so quiet.
I'm not a talker when I play, so mine's all up here usually. I use minis sometimes just to kind of latch onto the brain to table connection, but otherwise. But anyway, the point being though, when you have something like this, it's got these tools that facilitate easy play without having to produce anything.
Yeah,
You know,
I would recommend this, especially for people who like Dark Souls, because this is huge. I mean, hugely influenced by Dark Souls. Because listen to some, so Dark Souls fans, here are some of the words that you might roll up to spark your imagination: melancholy, crestfallen, forlorn. Those are all like crestfallen. The crestfallen warrior is a character in many of From Software games. In Dark Souls 2, there's a whole faction called the Forlorn. The initial introductory adventure in here is basically your character going through the undead prison in Dark Souls 1, because you wake up at a bonfire and you're moving.
You have to find your gear.
You have to find your gear. Yeah. So, and it is very much a Dark Souls inspired RPG, and that's what drew me to it. When I heard that, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. I like that. Yeah.
And it's 3 stats, D20 under, no roll to hit, very streamlined.
Yeah.
I struggle a little bit with some of the mechanics into the odd type games with attribute loss and critical hits for monsters and stuff. I tend to like it more like I hit and move on. But that's for solo play. I don't like to track monsters, really.
I don't either. And that's one of the big problems I had with the game that I want to talk about, Talisman Adventures. But yeah, finish your...
Well, so, and just as a quick segue, and we won't spend terrible time, but I am going to give a shout out. Colin's second book just came out.
Yeah.
Essentially the same thing, but it's Stephen King Dark Tower.
Yeah, that cover is full on Roland opening a door on the beach. That's
by Goran Gligovic, I think. So good. Yeah, Goran Gligovic. I actually have a number of spot pieces in this book, so I'm quite proud of that.
Cool.
But anyway, by Odin's Beard RPG, I just want to give him a shout out because he's just a pretty humble dude who makes really cool books. So
is the physical book is out at retail, or is it only to Kickstarter to backers right now? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't know. It'll be at Exalted Funeral soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'll definitely be buying it when it hits for retail.
It's cool because it's Weird West, right? So you can be like a gunslinging.
And speaking of Weird West, on my table right now, I have Shadows of Brimstone.
I'm excited to see that, man. I haven't really watched much Brimstone stuff. I'm excited to see what you do because you're talking about like cutting out all the chaff and just using the world and
cutting out all of the stuff that prevents me from actually getting the game to my table, because I love Shadows of Brimstone. I love it to death. I have so much stuff for it. I'm a huge Weird West fan. Like, it's one of my favorite subgenres of fiction, and it's so niche. Like, there's not a lot of Weird West stuff out there. So anything that like really embraces that genre, I'm like, okay, I'm all about it. But the two things that prevented me from playing are the maps, the map tiles, and the minis, because it's too much. The map tiles are too big. My table's small. They take too much time to set up. And the minis too, you have to store them. And then when you find the enemy that you want to fight, you have to go find your mini. You have to pull it out. I've got sprues upon sprues of minis I still haven't even assembled. So I was like, okay, I love this game, but there are two things keeping me from playing it. How can I play the game without those two things? How can I get 90? I mean, and it's already so close to an RPG out of the box anyways, that it's like turning the combat and exploration more into a theater of the mind is really took almost no thought at all. It was so easy to do.
I'm going to be curious. I assume you're going to show a post.
I'm
I'll
going to
be
be
curious
filming
to
the
see,
first one today.
because most of your supplements, from what I've learned, are like kind of fantasy oriented, like your card decks and stuff. So I'll be curious to see which tools you pull.
I'm not using any outside tools.
Oh, all in game. So are
only
you picking like 20 minis and that's your monster bestiary?
I'm
And
not
then
using any minis.
okay, so
None.
just
No minis, no maps.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yep, no minis. Combat is super. Combat is just like how we used to play in D&D.
Okay.
You're either engaged in melee or you're at range. There's no reason to have because there's no facing in
Yeah,
Shadows
yeah,
of
yeah.
Brimstone. There's no tactics at all in the combat. Like as soon as you put all the dudes on the map, everybody just kind of like goes together, and then you just roll buckets of dice. And
Sounds fun.
yeah, that's pretty much the combat. So let's get
Oh.
rid of the time and the space that you need to put all the minis together. And
Are you going to
yeah,
use
so
like quest cards from the game and stuff then to like,
yeah, the game
yeah,
comes with all of your. I mean,
all that stuff?
I have thousands of random encounters. There's all this fan made stuff.
Oh, nice.
The only thing I'm bringing outside from outside the game is that Fate Oracle system that I'm working on
I'm keen to see what you're doing with that.
yeah,
The fudge dice.
yeah, the fudge dice, using those and using the Fate system from Talisman RPG
Mhm.
combined together to create this kind of more of a story based oracle where it's not so
Mhm.
much yes or no, but it's are things favoring the PCs or are things against the PCs, and then you kind of interpret it from there.
I'll be curious to see how if you're able to do that and get away from too much uncertain answers. Like if you'll need more guidance, or
Yeah,
like I've
yeah,
seen some people talk with their oracles using numbers helps a little, because it's like if it's a 1, it's really bad, and the 20, it's really great. So I'll be curious to see how you are able to streamline that, because I love that. Chuck 3 dice and that's your answer.
yeah, yeah. It takes a little bit. It takes a little bit more of interpretation, but for
Mhm.
me, what it's doing is it's helping me tell my stories,
Yeah.
and that's kind of important to me right now.
So I wanted to, I think it was your D100 video when you highlighted the world building map book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking a lot about something you talked about in there, I think, like going slow, like settling into this game and just, we so often want to like roll and roll and roll and find out what happens next, versus like I think I've learned that you quite like bookkeeping in games, and like,
There's a certain kind of bookkeeping that I really enjoy, and there's
yeah,
also a certain kind of bookkeeping that I don't enjoy, like keeping track of all kinds of bonuses and penalties and combat, that kind of thing. I don't enjoy, but
yeah,
keeping a ledger of my
like
world
story
stories,
stuff. Yeah.
bookkeeping, I do enjoy quite a bit. Yeah.
I've been thinking about that lately, like slow burning more,
Hmm.
like 1 hex a night, explore in my mind, what does that hex look like? And I have this vision of my solo sessions this winter, like long nights, when the family's sleeping, like just 2 hexes. And it's not a full blown adventure. It's just getting to know the characters and really settling into that. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
more intimate, maybe. So not even necessarily full blown campaign, but just more of a slow burn play. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I like that idea more and more, I think, because I'm almost, it's more, I have so many resources for solo play, and I think your people might learn that you can get overwhelmed instantly,
You can.
and then you don't pull stuff. You don't end up using most of it. And then I tread water sometimes, and just instead like roll up 1 or 2 hexes and just literally explore them
Yeah.
over time. I don't know, just more slow burn, I think, will help me and how I'll play more solo. So that's something to think about, which goes back to the production thing we were talking earlier. You're building your own story. It's not going to be fleshed out right away. So part of, I think, the trick I've learned for myself solo playing is like, first of all, playing. Like you're actually making decisions. It's not all just reacting to dice.
Yes.
And then
that's a hard balance to find.
it's so hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I do go into this building versus
That's
do I go into this building?
Yeah,
And
that was kind of like I got some pushback on a point that I made in my 5 tips, and one of them was to cheat, and that's the stuff I mean by cheating. Like, you don't have to roll on everything. If you see something that you want to do that's interesting, just make it happen.
yeah,
Like
yep,
if you have a chart, like when I'm starting my Shadows of Brimstone play today, um, there's a chart that you can roll on that maybe your starting town has a trait that's interesting. Like it might be haunted or a mutant or a mutant town or a ruined town, not just a normal town, right? So I was looking through my cards of things that happen in those towns, and I saw the haunted trait. And the haunted trait has a certain mission associated with it where you can go and help the town. So I'm cheating at the beginning of my game by saying the first town I'm starting in is haunted. I'm not going to roll on the chart because I want to start in a haunted town because I
yep,
want to do that initial scenario that will
mhm,
probably snowball into other interesting things that happen.
yep.
Whereas if I was playing straight, not cheating, then I would roll on that table and those cool ideas may not happen. And then I could get stuck. So
It is. It's
make choices to have fun, right?
and don't forget you are GMing yourself. I hear about. I mean, sometimes GMs will fudge the dice to help their players. You can do that or not. But another one that has come up for me is player death. So I tend to play OSR games, which are highly lethal. And for a while, I got really frustrated. You roll up your 3 characters and then you're dead in 10 minutes because you had an encounter. And in traditional play, that's funny, and you just roll up another and keep going. And I personally don't love doing that, like
Yeah.
because I do like to settle into it a little bit. So I've begun doing like, we got the hell out of there and we dropped our sword, but we got out. You
Yep.
know,
No,
like
that
and
that's super important. I've been having a discussion about player death with people on some Facebook groups, and my solution to that is they don't die. Like
yeah,
go back and read all of these stories that our games are based on. Read Conan, read Elric, read Fafnir and Great Mouser, read Divlish the Damned. Those characters, they don't die because if they died, we wouldn't have stories to read, right? So
right.
we're telling stories. So that's why I try to approach my games more like sword and sorcery fiction, where each game is kind of like a short story in this character's life. It might
Mhm.
take place 5 years from now. It might take place 5 years in the past. If you tell a flashback story, then you know that your character can't die because it's a flashback.
They're alive still.
They're alive still. So in that flashback, a death means something different. A death means a loss. A death means maybe a companion died. Maybe they lost
Mhm.
a treasured item
Yeah.
or something. And so kind of interpreting it more like you're writing a piece of fiction rather than just
Mhm.
rolling dice and playing a game.
And I think that comes to the next nuance is like solo games versus dice chucking. I'm not a huge fan of journal games so much with prompts, and I write a
Prompts. Yeah.
journal story. I do like tables and dice chucking and combat. I think it's a balance that everyone needs to play. And personally, it takes 2 to 4 sessions for me to kind of get settled with my characters and comfortable and to really have that confidence almost of just choosing. And that's because the story is still developing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So coming up with in media res is a common trope, even in group play,
Yeah.
because who wants to sit at a tavern for 45 minutes rolling stats?
Yeah. Nobody making a choice. Yeah.
Choice. So as a solo player, it's important to remember you make choices still. I think that seems to be like something I've really begun to learn a lot. Like I don't go into that room where I do, or yep, there was a tool there that I needed, whatever. Like who cares really?
Yeah.
Who cares? There is no cheating because you're not playing with other people. And I guess
Yeah.
you could cheat yourself, but if you're not having fun, then that doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. By
Um,
cheating, it's like just, nudge make the cool stuff happen because
Right.
that's fun,
Is
right?
that the next shirt?
Yeah,
Make the cool
make
stuff
the cool
happen.
stuff happen. It's like I think in my Talisman video, this was an old idea from Warren Spector, you know, the video game designer who did Thief and stuff. He said when I'm paraphrasing, but when realism and fun compete, fun should win, right?
Totally.
So, but my thing was like with solo role playing, when realism and fun compete, the fun should win, but the realism should make it interesting.
Mm, yeah.
So it's like what, you know, the fun should win, but the rules that guide that fun, that should be something that you can insert in. You know, it might be fun, but in a different way than you had planned it to be fun, but still work towards that fun, cool stuff that happens.
So if you're traveling overland and your character comes across a ravine and you fail your dex check and you fall 45 feet, instead of losing 20 HP, you're knocked out and your leg's broken.
Or a a winged beast swoops in and grabs you and deposits you in its nest. Okay.
That's a whole nother session.
That's a whole nother session. That's a whole so if you die, your game's over. If you interpret failure as something interesting, it just, and that's why I think like the number one tip is to read, is to read stories. Because if you don't have these ideas in your mind of all these things that you've read or watched or of these stories, then it's really hard to come up with fun things to happen.
That's true. You know? And that's where oracles are great. Okay, I'm not gonna die.
Yeah.
Roll the oracle. What intervened?
Yeah.
Versus I just lost all my HP. Reroll another character. I'm discouraged. I'm just gonna go to bed now. Versus roll your oracle. And I think I don't necessarily read a lot of him, but I think Ernest Hemingway said, stop writing when you're in the middle of a good sentence. So when you come back to the book.
And you got something interesting.
Yeah. You know, so you fell off your ravine. In a normal game, you're probably not going to make it. But let's say you roll a weird oracle or Rory story cubes and pick one icon. Next session, that is the one thing that saves you.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
And
like something that, leave yourself on a cliffhanger, like literally, like
old school TV shows.
Yeah. I want to talk about. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it just kind of brings me to my next book. What we're talking about with story and stuff. But if you go first, then.
I wanted to loop back to combat.
Okay.
And I think this might derail the rest of our episode because I think this might be a topic that because you said something that I have been struggling with, and it was something that I was struggling with as I was playing the Talisman Adventure RPG, which is surprisingly amazing. Like they turned the Talisman board game into this incredible RPG system that has inspired me. It's inspired my Oracle system. It's like I'm like, wow, this thing is so amazing. But
did you find your game?
I mean, in some ways, yes, but in some ways, no, because the combat has been really hard to balance for a solo player with a solo hero. I don't like playing parties. I want to play one hero. The enemies have too much HP. There's too much. It takes too long. And you said something earlier about you don't want your combat to be just kind of like a war of attrition, right? You don't want it to go on and on. So turning that kind of combat into, okay, you roll, you hit, you win, or how do you? Like, where do people find the balance in combat and in a solo?
Yeah, and I think that's hard. I think that's why, I tried dealing with that in Fallen a little bit, which is a 2d6 system. So you roll 2d6 on 10 plus, you deal a wound, right? So the characters in that game, for example, real quick, have ranks. And each wound reduces them by 1 rank. So rank 6 takes a wound, he's rank 4. If he takes another wound, he's dead. Versus if you roll in the middle, you actually deal damage and you roll your damage dice. So that's one way I tried to mitigate it, granting the player more opportunity to deal meaningful damage, whole chunks versus minor hits kind of thing. So, but I think another way to do it is going with like a hit dice system. I don't know how Talisman's set up, but like if you're going against Centipede that has 40 HP.
Yeah, it's 4 hit dice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say D6 I would say that's an HD2 and use D6.
Yeah.
Instead of D8s and 10s.
Yeah, that's why I always go back to Scarlet Heroes.
Yeah.
It's because
they have the fray dice in that too.
They have the fray die, and enemies don't have hit points. Their hit points are just their hit dice. So if you're up against a creature with 4 hit dice, they have 4 hit points.
So does Talisman use hit dice?
No, it uses.
They just give them a number.
They give them a number, and not only do they have a number, but they often have armor that is also kind of temporary hit points. And so you might be fighting something with like 20 hit points, and you're doing D6 damage each, D6 minus 1 damage each time you hit them. And it's just kind of like, it was just too much.
Yeah.
The combat. And so I started scaling it down, and then I started kind of abstracting it. But I want to get to where I want to come up with a system that I can apply to every game I play.
Yeah.
That abstracts combat down to, the maximum is like 3 rounds of combat.
Wait, not go real simple, like 1, 2, and 3. A giant rat is 1, a giant lizard is 2, and a dragon is 3.
Yeah.
You have a lot of 2s in there, obviously, for your spread, because dragon 3 is like rare.
Yeah.
But you don't then you don't have to also fiddle with looking all the time at what exact numbers they have.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, I deal 1 and I move on. And then if you want to hone in on the damage, then you roll let's say it's a rat, and you want to have this big sewer battle with your 1 wound rat. Then maybe you hone in, if you choose to, your choice, and roll a d6, and it has 6 hit points. Then you deal conventional battle, maybe. I think it's totally okay to strip down. All those games are written for parties for 4 to 6.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And,
so
and the numbers reflect that.
And then I only let myself encounter 1 to 3 usually, because I don't want to die right away every time. It's boring to me. That's not the fun part. If you're with 4 people, you can laugh about it and be like, that failed. Roll up a new dude. But when you're playing alone, it gets a little discouraging, personally.
Yeah.
So I, got 1 enemies, 2 enemies, 3 enemies, maybe 4, whatever you decide is your spread. Do it right on the fly. A dragon's 4, but a giant ant is 1. And how do they hit you? They hit you for 1. Whatever their number is. I don't know. Something very quick, very streamlined.
Yeah.
Something like that, maybe.
Yeah. And also I was thinking making combat less about numbers, more about interesting narrative things that happen, right? You're fighting a rat. Okay. A rat you're going to be able to kill pretty easy. But if that off chance the rat bites you, you got a disease, and then you have to figure out how to cure that disease.
So what if you do let's say you're on an adventure into the sewers. We'll use these rats and insects as the common starter package. So let's say you go into a sewer and you're the first 5 enemies I encounter will be 1s. And then on the 6th enemy I encounter, it's the narrative or whatever, the big rat or something like that, where it becomes, before you're just slashing to get through and have your adventure, but on the whatever you roll or decide, that creature becomes your hook for the adventure, your plot climax for that episode.
Yeah, right.
And that rat has 10 life and does poison damage or whatever. So you leave yourself that opportunity to have a cliffhanger for the next episode. I don't know, no,
that's a good, super. I like that system and that's one thing that I really did like about Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition is they had this concept of minions. Of most of the enemies you're fighting in that game have 1 hit point. because that's the fodder that the heroes are slicing through on their way to
Right.
having more fun.
Right.
So, you weren't as a DM, you weren't having to keep track of, okay, each kobold has 20 HP. All right, okay, so that one has, okay, you did that. I mean, it's just like I thought D&D fourth edition was actually pretty interesting combat because of that, because of the way it stripped out a lot of that, just that buckets of HP that enemies
facilitates adventure.
Yeah.
To have fodder there, but you don't want to play just like murder hoboing. So then you have your episode villain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And maybe you have a 3-part arc where it's not the rat, but the Moriarty guy, know, and you fight his henchmen, and then, in your third session, 3 henchmen and then Moriarty or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a 4. And he deals you 4, which simulates him rolling a d6, so like traditional white box damage. And maybe you scale it up. That's going to be self-GM fiat. If you do make it to level 6, you can't fight 4s forever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe multiply it by your level.
Maybe multiply. Yeah. Have hero level dictate threat is a good idea. I know 4 Against Darkness started doing that, and so it kind of keeps things.
It's got to grow with you a little.
It's got to grow with you, but it doesn't feel like it's just the enemies grow with you, but they don't grow at the same rate, So it's like
right.
Sometimes that's really boring too, like in video games where the enemies scale with you, where you never really feel like you're getting more powerful because the enemies are also getting more powerful.
But you're still fighting a rat.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, wow, how come these rats now are like twice as powerful? It's like, well, yeah.
And honestly, let's say you get to level 3 and you have to go back to the sewer and you're stronger, and all those ones are just narrative.
Yeah. It's like,
or if I roll a 3, 4, or 5, as I run through, you simulate dash, whatever to get to your objective. I think that's important because you can get bogged down. I think it's fun to have an occasional crunchy. And I printed off like a dungeon map that I use sometimes, and it's double-sided. One's forest, one's dungeon with squares for mini action for that occasional
tactical kind of
because I do
skirmish
like that
style
sometimes, but I'm not going to do that
every time.
Every dungeon room. So if you have them, I kind of like this idea now too. 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. If dragons are 4s and rats are 1, you have a lot of fiat in there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and their thoughts on combat, I don't know. That could be like the one I personally struggle with a lot, and this comes more with stats, is like +1 bonuses and stuff. Like I love the idea of like my sword having +1. Like there's a lot of pushback on that because it's like, oh, it's not narrative enough. But I also kind of like simulating acquiring cool weapons or gear. Yeah.
I think you like the level up system for the weapons in here is so cool. So this is Sacrifice for people who so Sacrifice from Blackoath, Alex T, the creator of Disciples of Bone and Shadow,
Seekers in the Shroud,
which I have that coming, should be here next week. I'm really excited for that. So
Alex
this guy
is awesome.
Yeah, he makes really like kind of like the exact opposite of Tunnel Goons.
Is the opposite.
is Alex T stuff, which is super like crunchy, like
totally,
like very, very. For me, I would say his games are very complex.
So this one though is way simpler than Disciples.
Disciples, yeah.
I personally don't love like percentile games so much.
I don't either. Yeah.
And this is built very much on just D20 model. Very simple. This game's cool, guys. I just got mine in about a week ago, I think.
Yeah. But what you were saying about your weapon, your bonus. So there's a small system in the core book where as you kill enemies, your main weapon absorbs some of their power and it starts to level up. But then in a expansion that's out, a little supplement that's out that has been greatly expanded on to where now your sword or your main weapon can get all kinds of new stats and new abilities. And I also think you did something in one of the supplements. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my copy's coming. It's
Yeah, mine too.
companions. That's yeah, it's an adventure for this game that I wrote for Alex. I'm actually looking for that level up system you're talking about. Is that in one of the companions? Let's see.
Yes, it is. I have it right here. It is let's see here. Weapon Forged in Darkness, page 15 of the digital companion. Your weapon, as your weapon absorbs the power of enemies you have killed, you have different fragments, so it can go up to level 5. And you start by getting a +2 to your attack roll, and then you can start rolling up weapon traits. And your weapon can get new traits, and some of the traits are things like Command or Fate's Guidance, Howling Wind, Night's Eyes, Shatter, Sustenance, Soul Sacrifice. And all of these have little mechanical and narrative things that can start to make combat a little more interesting.
Yeah. So we should say Sacrifice is kind of a traditional hit target system with modifiers and stats, D20.
Yep, D20 system. Yeah.
So nothing out of the ordinary. What Alex does, though, is you start on level 3.
Yep.
So this is a Dark Souls type-ish game. He didn't say it was that, but
he says it's a Berserk. So, and Berserk,
Berserk
inspired Dark Souls. So yeah.
Yeah, it's this lone hero that's been banished, and you're out to wreak havoc on the church or whoever your enemy happens to be. What Alex does really well is he writes worlds. So all of his books come with these big worlds with lots of encounters and maps and locations, which is awesome. So if you're looking to play a solo hero, you start on level 3 in this, which seems counterintuitive. A lot of people like to build up from the beginning, but he simply states it marks your experience you've already gained, which is kind of a nice narrative, like, oh, yeah, now I go. So, and it's built so you're a little less squishy.
Yeah.
And you gain feats and skills. So if you're looking for a crunchier game with one hero and you want to settle into it, like we're talking, with a little more fiddliness and bookkeeping, this book can do a lot of that because it has an extensive bestiary in the back, already has GM-less solo rules pamphlet that comes with it. And Alex is no stranger to solo rules. All his games have been solo facilitated, if not based.
Yes, yeah.
And it's just beautiful too. He got some great art on it. You got yours from LF OSR shop?
So this is available from LF OSR, and it is still available. The physical is still available right now.
Yeah.
It's $39.99.
Nicely produced book. How many pages is this? Like 77, 8 pages. So I don't know. This one is one that I think I'm going to spend more time with. The supplement I wrote for it is like a little forest crawl adventure using a card deck, and you're essentially a warrior returning from the land, or you're fleeing something, and you come across this enchanted forest that's run by a necromancer and a cult, and all kind of weird, strange stuff can happen. And it's all about timing. Like, you can't really do anything but survive it. So it's not running through and slashing stuff. It's more like, will you make it through with your mind intact kind of thing? So you can play with a lot of like dark environments with Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Very Souls-like. Like pick a world you want to go into, like an environment, and beat up big crazy monsters.
Yeah, it's a cool book. One thing I'm glad that the purchase of the physical does give you access to the digital files, because one thing I like, this book is kind of hard to, it's a little hard to open up all the way. for
It's a little
play.
tightly bound.
It's tightly bound, but I'm gonna just print out my PDF of it and spiral and put that in a binder just so I can. I always like my books to like lay splayed open while I'm playing.
Did you get the map come with yours?
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
It's a very cool product.
It is.
The physical edition is really nice, really nicely made.
They spared no expense on this, I think.
Yeah.
And it came with a pamphlet if you want to just be a commoner.
Yeah, so this is like your level 1 character.
Yeah, if you do want to get your butt kicked right away.
Yeah. This is your Morkborg scum type type character.
No,
there.
I think Sacrifice is really cool. I think it's more accessible than Disciples. That game is really great if you love things like crafting and foraging and
there's so much in that game. It
overwhelmed me, but I know a lot of people play it and have been playing it for years. And I think
I recently read your review on.
Oh yeah, I wrote that quite a while ago.
Yeah,
That's how I got into the whole scene, was writing reviews for games like this. I found it was the best way to learn how to game, was try to, I don't even know if I call them reviews. That doesn't seem fair, but like understandings or impressions of games, you know? I don't know if I was experienced enough to be a reviewer.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you clearly stated that you hadn't played a lot of the game yet, but you had read the rules, and this was you were writing on your experience learning the game.
Yeah.
How the game made you. I mean, that is an important experience to have, is telling people, okay, when I read the rules for a game, do they get me excited?
Right.
You know, am I already thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to forget? Because when I read Disciples of Bone, I've read that book 3 times, and I love so much about it. But I know that as soon as I sit down to play it, I'm going to forget like 90% of the stuff that makes it what it is.
I think, yes, I agree with you. It's very dense. The layout's really dense in it. I think Alex just loves writing. That's the impression I get from him. I can't wait for him to just,
He's a good writer too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I can't wait for him to actually not do a rule set, but just give me a beautiful book of tables. Because he has I like his perspective and his take on things. And I think when he puts out his next book, which I'm going to tell him to do this, so if you're listening, Alex, a awesome, just world building book. I think he would be one of the best people to do something like that.
Yeah.
He is putting out the space book. I forget the title now.
Yeah.
I packed it recently, and I heard he put a ton of world building in it. So, so that's Sacrifice. I think has solo tools. So we've given you like real streamlined, stripped down Viking, if you want to be one of those. If you want to be a dragon shooting gunslinger, we've given you one of those. Or if you want to play like a branded dark knight against a church type entity or something, that's what Sacrifice would do.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, well, any other topics you want to discuss on this episode? We didn't hit everything we wanted to, but we can.
One last book, real quick, just literally a curveball.
All right, Deadball.
We always talk fantasy and dungeons, so I thought it'd be good. I know there's a lot of sports people out in the world too. I picked this up recently. I used to love baseball a lot growing up. I don't really do much sports now, but this fascinated me. And it's the 2nd edition. W.M. Akers published Deadball, which is a rule set. I got this at DrivethRu. Dice chucking baseball game that looks really cool. So if you're into like managing a team, and it's all old school, so he takes characters from way back early, you can build teams, track stats. By all accounts, this is a really cool book if you're into like sports.
I like that concept a lot.
It looks fun. Like you can track your character's progress with hits and stuff.
So I covered History Maker Golf on the channel, which is a golf game that I liked quite a bit. I actually I've pulled this out and play it a couple times a year. It's really really fun. I like the idea of a sports game because it does kind of give us that, it does scratch an RPG itch. I mean, a lot of RPG people grew up liking things like baseball because of all the stats and
Yep.
numbers and stuff. So, Deadball, why is it called Deadball?
It's from the Deadball era, I think. Like, I actually don't know a ton about baseball, to be honest, history or anything. I get the impression the guy who wrote this is massive baseball fan.
So this is from Wikipedia. In baseball, the Deadball era was a period from around 1900 to the emergence of Babe Ruth as the power hitter in 1919.
Yeah. And I don't know what made it Deadball.
The era was characterized by low scoring games. I guess probably the ball was dead. Was that before they added the
rubber core?
The rubber core that made home runs easier.
Probably.
Producing the lowest league run average in history, with teams averaging only 3.4 runs per game. Teams played in spacious ballparks that limited hitting for power. As a further hindrance to scoring, the ball used then compared to modern baseballs was a dead, both by design and from overuse. In addition, ball scuffing and adulteration by pitchers, notably the spitball, was not against the rules during this period. Oh, that's really interesting.
It is, and he pulls characters from that era. So if you can roll up rosters, you can use. There's like old leagues from back in the early days. You can play series. You roll pitcher versus batter. He has a very simplified like scorekeeping. So you keep a book. You know, he gives you the charts for keeping score of the game. I just wanted something different.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I love that.
I did, and I guess he wrote this so he could just like at night just chuck dice and play baseball. And
now, does it?
You roll a table and you get an ordinary hit, a productive out and out. So it's just like we play with Dungeons, but you know, kinds of hits and who gets it. I was like, oh, that sounds fun.
Does it simulate parks, like different parks at all? Does it have anything?
It may. I don't know. I do know like they have different dice for different pitch. So if you have an awesome pitcher, you might get like a D10 versus a D4 or whatever, you know, like I don't know, that kind of stuff. I just got this and I was like, yeah, I think a sport game would be kind of fun. Your players age. So you can like follow a team and build up a team.
That is super cool.
Yeah, I thought people might, you know, there's got to be sports fans on your show too, and they might like the idea of. So here's a bunch of old school rosters: the Cooper River Chickadees, the Knoxville Grackles. I don't know, just kind of neat.
So that's interesting because History Maker Golf. I want a fantasy game made with this system because what play does is they take completely different ideas of the sports game. So most sports games are very stat driven. You're keeping track of all of your stats and all of that kind of stuff. The play series kind of gets rid of stats. And it's all about rolling dice and looking up narrative things that happen on those dice. It's about telling the story of the sport. In their baseball game, each pitch and each batter interaction is like a story that you read. And you roll up the dice tell you what happened. The players have keywords like power hitter or whiffer. And if the dice dictate that one of those words is important, then you follow that path down that story track. And so it's a very different kind of concept. They abstract out all of the crunch and focus on. It's kind of like you're watching a game through the lens of a camera. And even the History Maker Golf, it says, okay, now you're at the green camera. The camera's focused on the green. The camera is panning over to the audience's reaction. How does that set up the next hole? You know, how does the audience's reaction to what you just did? Does that give your player a little boost of morale going into the next hole?
Do you
And
have a video of that?
I
on
do.
here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out. That
So I was
sounds.
thinking of like a dungeon game like that, where all of the stuff is abstracted out, and you're rolling on tables, telling just the story of your character's progression through a dungeon, and your characters just have keywords that might trigger certain things. But it was really interesting because going into a completely different genre of game, that golf game was the first sports game I'd ever played, and it really opened my eyes to a whole new way that we could be designing our games in our little niche.
That goes back to what you said about reading earlier, and this is what I really like about Jason Glover at Grey Gnomes
Yep.
YouTube series. He
Yeah.
talks a lot about looking at other stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's how you learn. You know, of course, buy all the games and play, but by looking at something totally random, you might get a totally weird new idea for your own design or how you want to run a game. You know, and this is sort of analogies to Dungeon. Like in the modern pitch era, if your pitcher has an ERA of 2.0 to 2.99, you get a D12. But if you're a 5 ERA, you get a minus D4. So you can like upgrade pitchers and you get bonuses. And this game struck me very much. I hope this is the case. I create a roster of 12 or whatever, and I can get very intimate with my players. And I know like Long Socks McGee just sucks, and but will he get a hit this game?
Yeah, he's in a slump, and maybe he'll come out of it. And
I hope it has that RPG element, but not through dungeons bashing, but just through play.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
I hope it does that for me. That's what I'm hoping. And you can like go pick up a new pitcher, and I hope you can trade and but it's still very streamlined. Like some of these sport video games I tried, oh man, it was too many windows and I didn't care. But this seems really streamlined. And that was his point, I think. And I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to get my weird, shitty team and play with, and it's mixed up genders and stuff too. So it's just all kind of like make your own baseball league.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm gonna get
this game is gonna be great. I'm excited about that. All right, sorry, that was long.
I'm at Drive-Thru right now. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get that. That sounds like something that I would at least want to read through and just see, maybe I'll get some weird idea for some other thing.
It's good to shake it up, right? Like,
yeah, it is.
Play some baseball or golf. Imagine that, or a fishing game if that's your bag. Like,
I would love a fishing solo RPG. There was an old game on the Game Boy called The Legend of River King, and it was a fishing Japanese RPG where you were like this kid and you had a fishing pole and you would go out and find fishing spots, and you could upgrade your fishing pole, you could upgrade your fishing stats, and you would catch fish and all kinds of stuff.
So all the domestic stuff from World of Warcraft.
Yeah. But like, then you have to fight like a boss fish by, might like break your pole or something.
Are you gonna write that game, Daniel?
I would like to, but no, I don't know enough about fishing. I'd have to
I don't know. It could be fun.
But that sounds like taking mundane things and turning them into fun games can be a cool experience.
It's not always about genre like dungeons and sci-fi, I think you can do a lot of, and I think there's more of that in the indie scene. There's a lot of like social games where you're just talking about what your identity is and stuff too. And people are really keen to explore things like whatever, sexual politics or gender politics or domestic life in role-playing capacities. And I think that's great because there's something for everyone. Yeah,
that's true.
Cool.
All right, well, I think we should cut this episode now. We've got some topics left to discuss on the next episode, which is good. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode and have safe and happy holidays.
Yes, likewise.
Probably Alan and I will be back in January in 2023 to discuss more things.
Good gaming to y'all, folks. Have fun.
All right. Talk to you guys
later.
Bye-bye.